everybody. Welcome to the Resistance broadcast. I'm John. Thank you so much for joining us today. As you can see, if you're watching, we have a fourth member of our group here. We're not the Beatles, but we like to consider ourselves the Fab Four for you today. I'm John. With me, as always, is James and Lacey. And our guest is an FX sculptor, prop restoration artist, and you're catching me because I'm reading because his credentials are so long. The owner of Tom Spina Designs and Regal Robot, and of course, like us, a huge Star Wars nerd. So welcome to the Resistance broadcast, Tom Spina. Welcome.
Thank you. Guilty as charged. Does that make me Pete Best today, or am I Ringo? I feel like I'm probably Ringo, aren't I? I'm okay
Ringo.
with that, by the way. I mean,
hey, Octopus's Garden is a fantastic song, and I will die on that hill.
Well, I won't pass you by, but anyway. So,
well done.
Yeah, thank you for that very nice intro. I'm just happy to be here. Always fun to chat with fellow Uber fans, and just great to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Oh, absolutely. We're very excited to have you. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say shout out to our friend Mark Newbold, who kind of put us in touch. So, who is one of the best of the best in Star Wars fandom, in Star Wars reporting, and involved with Celebration. He just revealed he's doing the podcast stage. So, Mark, we love you. Whether you're listening or not, you know we love you, as Han Solo often says. So, thank you, buddy, for this. But Tom, before we get into anything, for our audience, I know a lot of our audience are collectors and they're very dialed into what's going on. But for people who may not know where they can find your designs, your site, Regal Robot, fire off your plugs. There is no limits,
sure.
So go for it, man.
That's great. Usually these shows go on for like hours, and at the very end, just as they're fading out, they're like, "Oh, and where can people find you?" Fade out, fade out, fade out.
No.
It's so folks can follow us. We're on all the socials. So at Regal Robot is where to see all of our official Star Wars licensed cool stuff. And then at Tom Spina Designs, the other business, that's where we do a lot of restoration and conservation of original movie props and all sorts of wild sculpture, whether it's monsters or bronze busts or wax figures or gigantic foam statues and things like that for theme parks. We live in like a wonderland over here and just get to spend a lot of time making really, really cool stuff.
It's really unbelievable. And to think that, you as a little kid probably saw Star Wars. Did you have, and you've probably been asked this question a lot in interviews. So if you get one of those, like I've been asked this a billion times, just say like, enough with that. But right. I got to ask this one because there's a lot of kids out there who are maybe just getting into Star Wars now. People who were kids when we were kids, whatever. Did you know you wanted to, when did you realize, I want to get involved with this? I'm very interested in these creatures and these designs and these molds and stuff. Like what was the kicking off point for you? I mean,
Star Wars made it more tangible to me because Star Wars is when I started to see making of documentaries. Prior to Star Wars, it was The Wizard of Oz, it was King Kong, it was Mighty Joe Young, it was any movie that had a monster or stop motion, or fantastic costumes or things like that. I was always trying to make something I saw on television, and it didn't matter what it was. It was just I'd see things and I'd want to make them. I was drawing since I could hold a crayon. I was making stuff out of paper bags. I was making. The other kids would take a paper bag and draw the face of a character on it. And I'd try and reshape the bag with like a stapler and tape and whatever. Yeah. I wanted to make things dimensional. I wanted to make stuff real. And then, you start seeing the making of documentaries for Star Wars and then the special effects and the making of Empire Strikes Back that came out. And then, of course, classic creatures and from Star Wars to Jedi, all of that stuff was just like, I could not get enough. It was just like, gimme. And I was sure at 7, 8 years old, like I'm gonna make cool monsters and movie stuff. Like that's what I want to do.
That is awesome. That is a rare thing to stick with that. Everyone's like, I want to be an astronaut. And it's like, how many people really end up being an astronaut? That is so cool.
Well, and I feel like I've hit that same kind of lottery too, because like to be an astronaut, you've got to have that's a pretty narrow path, and you've got to have some luck on your side to get through there. And like, I feel like it's the same thing. I'm sitting here doing, this dream job every day and working our tails off to do it, but still, like, I could be working my butt off doing something that's terrible. So like, I'm pretty freaking lucky over here. I feel pretty cool that I found that so early and that I stuck with it. And, it's not the straight line that maybe it sounds like in a conversation this truncated, but it was always there and it was always driving me. And even when my path had to go a different direction to, make a living, I was always doing that on the side. I was always learning. I was always absorbing. I was always trying to make things better. And it just, eventually it very much got to a point where it was either going to take over or I just had to stop, and I decided, well, let it take over for a little bit and let's see how that goes, because it seemed like I was building something cool. And, that's now 16, 18 years ago or something like that. And just have not looked back since. And I feel, oh man, just so lucky to say it.
So we're happy you did.
Yeah. You don't sound like you're putting it on where like you're this jaded person. You're like, yeah, I'm used to it now. But when I'm on a show, I'm going to act like I'm the dream drop. You actually seem sincere that you are living and you're embracing that you are in this moment and you feel fortunate, but also you worked hard for it. But what was the moment that like broke the glass ceiling and like made it for you, like got you over that hump? Because there's obviously a lot of people, like you mentioned, who are trying to do this or like workshopping and do stuff. What got you your break? Like, what broke you through?
The Poe Dameron, we're doing this. We're really.
I got fired from Applebee's and I have no other options.
It's funny. It's like a lot of folks say, it's like the 20-year overnight success.
Oh yeah.
I think it really is it's been a culmination. It's been a slow build, just certainly I could probably point to there's high points for sure. I think in terms of things that were big breaks, I would probably say maybe one of the biggest, and this is not necessarily Star Wars related, but I've got a few of those, but one of the biggest was, so we do a lot of this restoration of original movie props and things like that. People will have a thing that was used in one of the movies, and I really heavily got into, I'm a big prop collector myself, originals from the films, as well as some fun replica stuff that my friends and I make.
Wouldn't have guessed.
But how would you know? But I managed to come up with some unique techniques and kind of takes on restoring old foam latex movie props, things that are like creature props and things like that. And I have a deep passion for preserving that stuff. I feel it's so important to keep that stuff around and to treat it as right as we can when we do conservation on it.
I love that.
It's so easy to go overboard with that sort of thing. And our crew is so good and focused on that preservation aspect. And I'm real proud of what we've done in that regard. And a while back, my friends, Bob and Kathy Burns, who are, big movie historians and major movie prop collectors. Kathy passed away last year, actually, but almost exactly a year ago, actually. In fact, the day this airs, it'll be a year ago on the button, and it's Bob's birthday today. So, Bob, happy birthday if you happen to be watching.
Happy birthday,
Bob. Happy birthday, Bob.
But they, I had been friends with them for a long time, and they had a bunch of things that needed a little bit of help. And one day, Bob said that Oscar's face was on the floor, and Oscar needed help. And I'm like, okay, first off, who's Oscar? Second, have you called 911?
My face.
He didn't call 911. He called me, and the reason was Oscar was the wolf from American Werewolf in London. And he called him Oscar because Rick Baker, who we all, of course, know from the Star Wars Cantina, and for applying the Emperor's makeup in Empire Strikes Back, but he had made that wolf, and that was the first makeup Oscar. So Bob had that wolf, and he decided he'd call the wolf Oscar. And so I went out cool. and fixed up that wolf for him, and also a bunch of other stuff while we were there. I spent about a week in the famed Bob's Basement. For anybody out there, look up It Came from Bob's Basement. Also Monster Kid Memories. Those are two of Bob's books. Just amazing stuff. Really, really wonderful, wonderful people, and just so lucky to know them, and in this case, I just was happy to help them out. But that turned out to be a really neat thing to do. It caught a lot of people's attention. It was a pretty dramatic before and after, even though the work wasn't super invasive or anything like that. Mm-hmm. And that, even if it didn't, it definitely opened doors in terms of the restoration work. I think it showed people in a very dramatic way what we could do. And it was such an important piece that, maybe it gave folks a sense that, well, if people would trust Tom with this, maybe his team can work with my piece. Wow. But more important than that, it gave me this real wonderful connection with other effects guys. And, it helped me to get to know Rick, which is just like, little kid dream. Oh my gosh, little kid Tom sitting there going like, I hope one day I can, say hi to Rick Baker, let alone, get to know him a little bit. And then, it became this thing where you'd meet some guy whose work you love, and you tell him, oh yeah, I love your work. And then they'd be like, your name sounds familiar. You're like, oh, I fixed up the wolf for Bob. I'm like, oh my gosh, you did that,
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
It was this great, it was a great calling card or something. So, maybe that's a big break right there. Certainly on the Star Wars side of it, the props behind me actually are all from a commercial we did in 2012. It was a Super Bowl commercial where Volkswagen wanted to recreate the Cantina. It was a follow-up to their Vader Kid commercial.
Oh, and what a commercial that was, huh? Oh my God.
Yeah. And if you go to TomSpinaDesigns.com, you can search for American Werewolf and see that project. You can search for, if you just search Volkswagen, it'll come up. If you search Cantina, you'll get like tons of things, because we've wound up doing so much Cantina stuff over the years, which is great for me because that was my favorite scene ever. But so I get the call, and it was like, hey, we don't have a lot of time. We want to create the Cantina, and Pablo Hidalgo and Steve Sansweet said we needed to talk to you. And I'm just like,
what a moment in itself. Like, oh, these two people specifically.
Right. Yeah. And I was lucky to know the two of them just as fans. Mm-hmm. Steve, for his role in Lucasfilm at the time, he, at the heart of it, he was just a fan, and he loved and still loves fan makers. He loves people that just, make cool, unique, one-off type stuff. And I had been doing that since the 90s. I guess technically I've been doing that since I was 2, but, or certainly since Star Wars came out. But, and Steve had a couple of sculptures I had done. And so I got to know him a little bit that way. And Pablo, I knew from online. He had that, I think it was called the Index Trilogy, but he only ever got through most of Star Wars. But he would go through scene by scene or shot by shot and just pick out cool things in the background. And I was like, oh, I have to get to know this guy. Like, this is my type of fandom. Like looking at the Cantina scene and pointing out weird stuff in the background. Oh, the pointy hat guy from the Cut Jabba scene is in the background of this. Or this alien who's walking around outside is inside, or blah, blah, blah. Here's the land speeder salesman. Like all kinds of amazing little stuff. My favorite is Life Debt, Schmeif Debt. When Greedo points the gun initially at Solo and stops him, right? Solo's trying to walk out. Chewie's with him. And Greedo comes in, going somewhere. Watch that sequence. Chewie is in the same shot, just walks away. You're on your own. Whoopie out, and he spotted that. And so I got to know him through that. And they, when Volkswagen came to them, they had asked to borrow, I think, the real masks. And they're like, well, one, Lucasfilm doesn't have them. And two, even if we did, they'd be falling apart.
Right.
You know, they'd be too fragile to use. What you need is someone like Tom Spina, who's already sculpted a lot of these. Because I learned how to sculpt, or taught myself how to sculpt, by making Star Wars monsters.
Yes.
And that was a huge break for us. That was, you know, and it was also probably, you know, 3 of the craziest weeks of our lives, making a whole bunch of monsters as quickly as we could, and getting them in a crate and shipped off to LA to meet them on set and shoot this thing. It was a lot of fun.
That's incredible. Now, when it comes to what part is the most fulfilling for you? Is it creating something new? Is it restoring something old to preserve history? What scratches your itch the most? Like, because for me, just from a fan perspective, whenever I see the preservation of something, I remember, like, it's very nostalgia triggered from childhood. Like the old beat up creepy looking Leonardo mask from Ninja Turtles 1990. And seeing people like selling that on eBay, and it's like the most horrifying looking thing ever. That, or like stuff from Ghostbusters or something, like, and or what they did with The Last Jedi, recreating the mold of Yoda from The Empire Strikes Back face for The Last Jedi, all that stuff. Is it that, or is it creating new? Like, which one is the most fulfilling for you?
It's tough, man. I mean, you know, certainly preserving an original piece of movie history is. It's like, first off, you just feel honored that someone's entrusted this thing to you, you know?
Yeah.
And I've got this great group that I've been training forever that now, you know, I can hand these to these folks and you know, it's like, sometimes they'll even surprise me with what they're able to do with stuff. And I love that. And it's really cool to just be around this stuff, like to be around a real prop from a movie. It's like an indescribable feeling. If you're, you know, if you're someone who loves the making of films and you love, you know, looking at the screen and then seeing this thing in front of you, like, it's hard to put into words how direct that connection is.
I would imagine it to be like meeting the celebrity for the average person. Like when you're like, that's Han Solo, he's standing right in front of me, kind of thing.
Right.
But like for the person that cares about the prop and the makeup and the design that goes into that and the work, it's like, that's the real one. That's the on-screen one. This is the real. I'm holding it, you know?
What was your top one? What's the one that you were like, I can't believe I restored blank?
Ooh, man.
Give me a Star Wars one and a non-Star Wars one.
So I get this one a lot. I'm going to try and answer in a different way, because I often, so usually what I say is Star Wars one is Muff Tack, the original Muff Tack costume, which we restored also for Bob. That's not the original behind us. That's just one of our reproductions. But non-Star Wars, usually I go with the American Werewolf, because that's just, it's just insane. Like, it's just hard to imagine a more important makeup thing than you know, something from that movie.
How about weirdest?
I mean, oh gosh, they're all kind of weird. I will say, you know,
we went from best to weird, like, but they're the same. I mean,
yeah, right, yeah, and you know, gosh, you know, the other thing is, we're at the point, we have done so many of these restorations where there are times where, you know, something comes up and I'm like, boy, that sounds a little familiar. It's like, Tom, we restored that 5 years ago. It's like, oh, okay, that's why I remember. Let's see here. You know, the first Ninja Turtle we restored, which is one that I did the bulk of the work on personally, that was pretty special. I'm a huge Jim Henson fan. I got my start with the Muppets. You know, my first internship was on Sesame Street.
That's great.
Oh, that's so awesome.
And and you know, the Jim Henson Creature Shop is just the pinnacle of animatronics, and what they were doing on Ninja Turtles was so cutting edge.
Yeah.
So to get one of those real costumes in hand and to be able to restore it, that was really freaking cool.
Oh man.
Enoch from Land of the Lost, just because I loved that show as a kid. We got his original costume in, and Mike Thomas and myself did the bulk of the work on that.
They forget about, like when they see like the theme song or something, they're like, oh my God, that wasn't a fever dream. That was a real show I used to watch as a kid, like every day. And I completely forgot about it.
So you want weirdest. I don't know that this is really the weirdest, but this is, you talk fever dreams. So Christine at the shop, someone emailed us it was Bobo. It was Dan Aykroyd's weird, like, mutant baby character from the movie Nothing But Trouble.
Oh my God.
And Christine was sure that movie didn't really exist, that she had just made it up in her mind. And like, I think it's a defense mechanism, you know, she needed to know that things were okay. So she just blocked it out. But so she like exclaimed, like read the email and just went, "Oh my God!" And I was like, "What is it?" It's like, that movie was real. Like, I thought for sure I made it up, and I was like, "Nope, that's a real movie. It's a weird movie, but it's a real one." But yeah, we restored his head. That's a little weird.
No, that is weird,
So,
and that's a sort of a deep cut for a lot of people because that movie missed the mark, so to speak. But it's definitely
a nice
one of those
way to say it. Yeah,
it's one of those throwback. It's so bad I want to like it things nowadays.
Right.
So, yeah.
I can't help it. I can't move any further. We have to stop for a second. I need to talk about the Muppets because you brought it up, and I'm a huge Muppets fan, gigantic Muppets fan. I grew up with them. That's what I love. So, in addition to Star Wars, obviously. But,
I'm gonna hold on. Let me just do a little of this.
I can't see. I'm too far away. What is
Statler and Waldorf.
So right there. So there's
above.
There's also a Rizzo and a couple of Yip Yip guys.
I see the Yip Yips. Yeah.
So the Rizzo I made around 1991 or 92, right around the time before I got my internship. I had made one prior to that, and then I got a tour of the Muppet Workshop in New York City, and I got to see the real Rizzos there and a bunch of other puppets. They handed me a Grover to try, and I was like, "This is freaking Grover! You want to talk about meeting a celebrity? Try meeting Grover." You know? And so I made that. The two old guys there, the Statler and Waldorf, those were actually made for a friend of mine's wedding. He's a fellow puppeteer. He was getting married, and he was getting married at a converted theater that had a balcony.
Oh my God.
Me and Eric Jacobson, who's now like Piggy and Fozzie and all of that, we're going to do the two old guys. And so I did the sculpts on them, and my friend Steve Wiedemann did molds, and he passed them off to a third guy who was going to bake them and run foam. And somehow in the drying process, I think Steve had used two different types of plaster, and the two different types of plaster dried at two different rates, and the molds cracked. Yeah. So I managed to just have a slip latex like reference casting I had pulled of each. So we never got to do that. What we did wind up doing was we built a Swedish chef. I carved him out of foam at the last minute, and I just did like the Swedish chef presenting the cake and like, you know, trying to chop it like with a giant machete and stuff like that. It was ridiculous, but you know, this is what you do in life. But yeah, the Muppets are super special to me. That especially, you know, obviously the Muppet Show. I'm obsessed though with the old commercials that Jim used to do, with the industrial films he did and stuff like that. If you ever get the chance to see any of that stuff, it's insane and it's so good. It's like this sense of humor is I don't know, there's something about it that just resonates with me. Have you guys, anybody been to the Museum of the Moving Image in New York and Queens?
I want to go. I haven't been able to go yet. I really want to go.
So they have a permanent Jim Henson exhibit. The Henson family gifted them, I think it was 400 artifacts. Wow. I actually got to consult on that in terms of what they were going to bring in. And I got to, or rather our shop actually got to restore a whole bunch of things. So we worked on, while the Henson Creature Shop and Puppet Workshop in New York got to work on the sort of fabric and fleece characters. My shop got to work on all the foam latex stuff. So we worked on things from Labyrinth.
I was going to say Labyrinth is like my ultimate favorite thing. And it was one of those, There's something about Jim Henson movies when I was little, like you'd come across a VHS at like a tag sale or something, and then you'd pop it in and it'd be this magical thing. That was Labyrinth for me. I found it at a book fair and I was like, what is this? Oh, interesting. And I threw it in, and then I've been obsessed ever since. But no,
I can't imagine finding that without ever knowing about it. Like, I feel like I've always known about it.
I was like 8, yeah. I was
That's
like really
amazing.
young.
That's so cool.
But bringing it back to Star Wars. So Frank Oz, obviously Yoda. Have you worked with Frank?
I was on set a few of the days when Frank was there shooting Sesame, doing either Grover or Bert.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was definitely neat. I got to I think it was not the rap party. Sorry, it was they had a holiday party. The year I was there. I was just an intern. I was like the guy who got the puppets coffee, you know?
I would totally do that job in a heartbeat. Like, you're so lucky.
What was neat was I was like the assistant to the Wrangler. So it was the best freaking position you could be in. You were right on set, and you were, you know, interacting with all the performers, all the puppeteers. All of the guest stars would, you know, gravitate to the puppet booth where where all the puppets were anyway. So, you know, Hillary Clinton was there, John Goodman was there, Marissa Tomei was there, like all of these amazing people just coming through, and they're like, oh, hi, look at all these cool puppets. And you're like, what the, you know?
Oh, my God.
And then working with Kevin Clash, and Frank was there, and Joey Mazzarino. And
I grew up with Marty Robinson's son.
Oh,
did, like,
Marty.
Snuffleupagus. Yeah.
Yeah. Marty is amazing. He and Pam or Shorlo, I'm gonna murder her last name. I won't even say it. Were super nice to me on my first day. Everybody went to lunch, and I was just standing there, and I just kind of like looked around. And I was like, you know, like I had no idea where to go. And I remember clearly, Marty was the last one leaving. He looked at me. He's like, "Are you coming?" I was like, "Yes, sir."
Yeah,
and
he's so nice.
Followed him. He took me
Wow.
to the cafeteria. We ate lunch together, and he was so nice. And it really, like, that made my day. And it really it made that whole process so much better. It was a really cool moment.
Wow.
I might have to start a Muppet podcast because I have plenty of questions, but I'll let John get back to Star Wars.
Well, no, I mean, the threads are there. I mean, Yoda is, you know, via Jim Henson's Creature Shop and George Lucas saying, like, what can you guys come up with here? And the Stuart Freeborn lookalike that we all know that story. Yeah. But, you know, it's just kind of like I rabbit hole YouTube all the time for interviews, like even stuff like, you know, George Lucas on a specific show, or even Phil Tippett being interviewed on an obscure podcast or something where he may say something that you never saw in Empire of Dreams, or, you know, that stuff. And then or funny stuff like a viral clip going around of like Jim Henson being Rolf on the Arsenio Hall show, and like, you know, saying like, son of a bitch, you know, like stuff like that. And when it comes to Star Wars, like, I think what's like, we always try to on this show talk about what separates Star Wars from other science fiction, because me personally, I'm not a big sci-fi guy, and sometimes people they get mad at me about that, but like Star Wars is different. And I think one of the things that separates it beyond the fantasy element of how the story is told are like just the whimsical nature of, and the nooks and crannies of everything. And like you were saying, Pablo Hidalgo pointing out all these weird things, and the creatures. It's just like, and then when they brought back like with The Force Awakens, and you see like in the first promo, J.J. Abrams is talking, and they have this giant complex puppet walking behind him. I'm like, oh my God, they're doing puppets. And it's just like, it blows my mind. So I guess, you know, for you seeing, you know, as a little kid, seeing everything's practical, and it was from the nature of how do we make this happen, to now today where it's we can make anything happen with digital, there still seems to be the affinity and love affair for the physical, tactile thing. So do you, I don't think that'll ever go away, no matter how good, you know, deepfake is, or how good CG and stuff is. But are you guys in any way evolving with the industry in that regard, the way like even Star Wars is? And I know, you know, you can get to, in a little bit, we'll get to maybe what you did for Boba Fett and The Mandalorian, because I just watched the gallery where, you know, they brought back Luke Skywalker using CG and all that stuff, and they blended the puppets and stuff. So How are you guys handling the evolution, I guess?
I'll tell you, it's a really cool time. I'm like you. I don't think it ever can go away. I think, no matter how good the technology is, it's always going to be cheaper to throw a little makeup on someone than to digitally make someone's face up. Now, I don't know. Maybe I'll eat my words. Maybe someday that cost balance is going to change. But until that happens, there's always going to be practical stuff. The other thing is there are just benefits you get from having something on set. There's benefits, happy accident. It allows a director freedom to make choices that they couldn't make otherwise, or to not lock themselves in on something because maybe they shot it a certain way for a certain type of creature. I guess nowadays, I don't know, the tracking is so good. Maybe the whole idea of locking things down or shooting motion capture doesn't even matter anymore. It's incredible how far that stuff has come. But I think a lot of people are always going to have an affinity for it. I think even the best CG still has a hard time competing with something that is physically there with the actor. Yeah. And now maybe it can be a more realistic creature in certain ways, but the tactile interaction just it's really rare that you see something that's totally convincing when there's interaction. So I think that's always going to happen. And I think there's an aesthetic that comes from it. There's a look. I am a huge believer in the fact that limitations force creativity. And that part of what made Star Wars so special were all of these limitations that were on George and his creative choices to get around those obstacles. Yes. And it forced him to make choices. It forced him to shelf a lot of weird ideas when you look at the early drafts of the script and stuff. Ghostbusters is another great example of that. The early drafts of that script are weird. But because they couldn't shoot what that was, they wound up writing something better.
Right.
And so that's kind of the way.
Jaws is another big example.
Yeah, there you go. Like there's all of these examples of that. And I feel like that's the thing that probably is most at risk right now, because directors don't have anyone to tell them no anymore. They don't have things they can't do anymore. And, while that seems like a magical opportunity for creativity, I feel it probably in the end is limiting in a weird way. Back to how we're dealing with it, I think for us, the cool thing is to be able to incorporate modern technology into making practical stuff. So, whereas back in the day, if we had to make a mask to fit someone, we had to have the person in our studio and mold their head claustrophobically, straws in the nose, whatever.
Yes.
Whereas now we had someone that we were making a mask for that was overseas, and their schedule didn't allow for them to come into our shop for a fitting. So, but they were going to be in LA for a couple of days. So we had them go to a friend shop in LA to get life scanned. They sent us the digital file of that. We digitally created an underskull of a mask that perfectly fit his life mask and mailed a printed copy of it to him overseas, where he tried it on and said, "It's great, but it's pinching my ears right here." We said, "Just keep that copy." We printed another one with more gap around the ears, sent that to him, that fit. We printed the final, and then we fiberglassed it and incorporated it into the mask we were making. Other times we're taking stuff like the Chewbacca's that we make with Regal Robot. We took a scan of one of Stuart Freeborn's original Chewbacca skins that a collector friend of mine had. And the skin had deteriorated a little bit over time. It had been stabilized, but it hadn't been restored. The collector wanted to keep it as original as possible. So we scanned it because it was delicate. And then we made a mold of that scan. We printed out the scan, molded it, made what they call a clay press of that, so that I could have a clay positive that was a perfect copy of what that scan was. And then in clay, I restored the damage away. And then I sculpted in Peter's eyes underneath, because the most important thing about Chewbacca is Peter's eyes,
Right.
That is the soul of that character. And from there, then we make the mold off of that to make our production piece. And, so that's part of why our Chewbacca feels so authentic, because we had to put some life into it with the sculpt and with the pose and things like that. And certainly the eyes are unique to it, but the foundation of it is that original prop. And it was done in a way that we couldn't have done 10 or 15 years ago. It was done in a way that didn't harm the prop at all, but allowed us to incorporate those authentic elements of it into the sculpture I was making. And to me, that's amazing. And now with things like our archive collection with Regal Robot that we just launched, which, people are going to find out a lot more about in a few weeks at Star Wars Celebration.
Or later today.
Yeah, wink, wink. But that's an opportunity for us to take that same sort of technology and to take things from, the archives, the place we all are just, amazed that it even exists. We wish we could get there. We want a piece of it. Now here's that chance for us to say, we get to put our hands on the real thing, and we're going to be able to use this technology to make an amazingly accurate copy of that for people. And then we'll hand finish them and we'll hand paint them, and, we'll put our spin on it and give these folks something really, really special. It's an extension of what we were doing. So if anybody saw our Rancor prop replica on Regal Robot, that was a piece that is in the archives, and we high-res digitally scanned that, restored it in digital form, because that, again, is an aging latex piece, and then output that digital one-to-one in a cool new pose, and made this incredible replica that, and I'm patting myself on the back here with incredible replica, but
you should.
We didn't just make a statue of a Rancor. We didn't even just make a statue of the Rancor. We made a replica of the puppet Rancor. We made that thing that you saw Phil with his hand up, walking through the miniature cave as Dennis Muren shot it in the high-speed camera. The best compliment we got on it was Phil. So Phil signed the plaques for us on that, and we sent him a copy, and he sent back this wonderful note and said, everybody did a great job. He said, the only problem is they didn't put the hand in his ass where I used to, where I had to have the hand. And I'm like, thanks, Phil. But that's, that's a really great compliment on a piece like that. And that's the sort of thing we want to build on. We've done the Rancor that way. We've done CZ3 that way. We have a Tauntaun maquette that comes right out of Phil Tippett's concept maquette molds from 1978. It's amazing that mold was even viable, but we managed to get one cast, and one of Phil's guys, just brilliantly managed to get a clean casting out of that for us to master our piece with. We've got the Gamorrean Guard, which is technically from Mandalorian, but it really is like the Book of Boba Gamorrean look right now.
Oh, wow.
And that was sculpted by Tony McVeigh, who we worked with on our Salacious Crumb replicas. And Tony had the molds for that. So, we have the opportunity to give people things that have direct lineage to the stuff they've seen in these making of documentaries, to the stuff they've seen, leaked online when the shows are first coming out. That Gamorrean maquette was the first thing Favreau showed from season 2.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was just like, that's so cool. Tony, do you know who made that? And he's like, I did. I was like, we have to talk,
So you mentioned CZ3. That's such an obscure droid.
Yeah.
Wasn't that? I think that Anthony Daniels played that too. And it was like very, like barely on screen. Like,
yep. That's my favorite kind of thing.
Yeah. That's good stuff.
Yeah.
That's the good stuff. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh my God.
Yeah. There's one reason we did CZ3 and you're looking at him, like that was our good. Lucasfilm rep was shaking his head like, people want this. And I'm like, I don't know. I want it,
Yeah, right. And people do love those. Like people always like those weird, obscure action figures. So why not the bigger version?
Exactly. And you're looking at this universe that's huge, but we keep getting copies of Darth Vader's helmet or a Stormtrooper helmet or a Boba Fett helmet, like, and that's great. I love that stuff. I've got some of that stuff. But there's so much other cool things, so many other cool things we can be playing with here. Right. And I like that we get to give folks variety, and that we can do it in a way that traces back to those original props, and that, you know, pulls like a faithfulness in them. Yeah. There's a feel that you get when you look at an original prop from a film. And I mean, I'm so lucky that we get to do this on a daily basis with Tom Spina Designs, where we're bringing things from all sorts of films, not just Star Wars. Mm-hmm. But there's a feeling to an original prop, especially an original creature prop. It's something about the level of sculpting in it. It's something about there's usually a little crudeness that you don't expect because somebody had to make it, you know, in like a day and a half.
Were the materials way different back, like say 40 years ago than they use now?
Not dramatically. So the biggest advent, I'm like shifting myself around. So just
me too.
For anybody watching the video, I just made someone fall over. The biggest change is probably the introduction of silicone, whereas, you know, you go back 30 or 40 years, silicone was used for some mold making, but not much in terms of casting.
Gotcha.
You know, nowadays you get a fair amount of stuff that's cast in silicone, and even silicones had an interesting sort of lifespan as a casting medium. Initially, it was a lot of times they were using a particular kind of it that was heavily deadened and all of this stuff, and some of that stuff continues to act on itself over time and just turns to goo. But there's others that hold up pretty well. And it offers a certain translucency and realism that foam latex doesn't always have. That said, you know, look at some of Dave Elsey's makeups. Dave, who did the work on episode 3, all the Creature Shop stuff. You know, there's times where I've looked at his stuff and I'm just like, you know, wow, is that a silicone appliance? And he's like, nope. You know, he's like, silicone for show, but foam if you're a pro. You know, it's just like he is so brilliant with it. And there's so many guys out there who can paint foam so well that you believe it, tricks your eye into thinking there's translucency there. And foam is great. And the reason it's still around, even though it's a tough material to keep long term, is it's super flexible. It's extremely lightweight. It is many, many times lighter than silicone. And it's because of that alone, it makes itself, you know, it's so useful in makeup applications, and certainly for bigger animatronic things. If you had to do a giant head out of silicone, it weighs so much that the actor couldn't keep his head up anymore.
Oh,
you do it in foam latex, and it weighs barely anything. It's just the mech that you've got to support. So, you know, I think those materials are going to stick around just because they're still useful.
That's interesting. I was just about to ask, we were talking about, you know, like, are you worried about the visual technology, like the computer technology kind of taking over? And then I was thinking, because you're saying that, do you think there's going to be a dramatic step, like some type of technology that comes out where they're like, look, we've improved latex now, or something that's going to cause something that would be like, now we're basically using like a paintbrush to just mold right onto the face or something.
Right. And there's some stuff like that. I've lost his first name, but Tinsley, makeup artists came up with these Tinsley transfers, I think they were calling them, where they used an existing makeup material. Trying to think of trying to layperson this, no offense to anybody out there, but they took an adhesive, normally something that you would use to blend off a scar, or, you know, or to glue on foam latex appliances and things like that. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't the most modern adhesive, but they took one of those and they found a way to sort of, for lack of a better word, dehydrate it and put it into a negative shape, and then have it have this particular tattoo transfer sort of backing on it. And what it basically took was where you used to have to take a clay sculpture of a scar, and then you'd make a mold off of that, and then you'd cast it in foam latex with the actor's face underneath it, and then you'd bake that in an oven, and now you'd pull that, and then you'd have to glue it on their face, and then you'd have to blend all the edges. The edges are really tough. You've got to add material and try and make sure that you're going over the ridge.
Stuff,
Tedious.
Yeah.
Really tedious, really time consuming. You know, what they did is they said, now you could take your mold and spatulate this material in it, put this transfer material on the back, dehydrate it, and then peel the transfer off, put it on someone's face, slide that away, activate it with alcohol, and then just basically melt away the edge. And it really revolutionized how they do a lot of scar applications and things like that. And it's amazing stuff, and it's a cool step forward. It sped up the process immensely. So I'm sure there's still other stuff like that out there to happen. And it'll be neat to see what the next one is.
Wow. So you talk a lot about molds and like your community, which I imagine it's like, have you heard this mold is around, or like someone has this mold? Is there a certain mold that's like the holy grail that you're like looking to get your hands on at some point?
Oh man. I mean, for me, anything Cantina, if any of those old Cantina monsters,
putting it out in the universe for you. We're manifesting right now.
Yeah. I would love to see some of that stuff turn up. There's a handful of Cantina aliens that haven't turned up. Most of, so for me, one of my big collecting passions is the Star Wars Cantina. It's the original props from the movie and masks and things like that. For years, I've been tracking that stuff down. And there's a few other collectors that do as well. And there's a handful of out of dozens of monsters made for that amazing scene, there's a handful that are still missing. I think it'd be really neat for any of those to turn up. It's always amazing when something kind of comes out of the woodwork, and it's just like you said, like, oh, did you hear they found blank? It's really, really cool. I'm always keeping my ears open for that sort of thing. And if anybody has any leads on any Cantina molds, you let me know.
I think you just pitched a very cool, like, sort of Indiana Jones documentary. Right. Let's go find these 5 pieces.
Yeah.
The Infinity
Raiders
Stones of Star Wars mold.
Monsters. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah. So, before I want to ask you about what work you guys did for Star Wars, because our audience would hate us if we didn't. So, before I do that, though, do you have one favorite Star Wars creature above all?
Oh man.
Like picking your children, right?
Because we do a segment on our show called One with the Force, and we ask tough questions like, but I have 3 favorites. No, you got to pick one.
I mean, I've come to one conclusion. That's John's a jerk right now. No, let's see here. Boy, I'll tell
Copy,
you what.
save segment.
Did that just get saved? Yeah, that's going to be the. Can we use that in the promo, please? Thank you.
How us Long Island people talk to each other. It's all right.
Right? Come on. Boy, I'm looking around because I have a lot of like the different replicas around me. So Muff Tack is usually my go-to. He's really cool. He's really furry. The late Lane Liska made him. He's unique to all the others in the type of fabrication that was done with him. Rick Baker calls him the spider guy, I guess because he's got all those eyeballs. Yeah. He's got his little sausage snout thing. I mean, that's hard to beat. That's hard to beat. If I had to pick another one, if someone said you can't pick Muff Tack, that's too easy. I would probably go with the Don Rickles alien. Technically his name is Bom Vindum, the Advose, but everybody I know always called him Rickles. Apparently that was his name on set because he kind of looks like Don Rickles. He's the guy, Horn Top is what John Bird calls him. He's got like one horn and big black eyes.
Found him, yes.
There's 2 of them in the holiday special Cantina. There's a different paint job one as well. Rob Bottin sculpted it. It was a mask that Rob had sculpted prior to Star Wars. It's heavily influenced by Rick Baker's Devil Guy. Rob during Star Wars was like, I think 16 or 17 or something like that. Like he was just this giant kid. And for him to be in there, and he was sort of Rick Baker's protege at the time. He obviously, looked up to him like crazy. And Rick and he worked on the Brain Guy alien. I think Rick kind of started it and Rob probably finished it. It was based on a little sketch that Rick did. It's funny. There's something really cool. The final Brain Guy has this sadness about him, this kind of haunted look. Rick's original sketch, he looks just real evil, which is cool too. But I always love seeing how stuff evolves that way too. Like, how do you get from concept to reality? Where did it change? Whose influence was what? This is why these movies are so, still so fascinating to all of us. This is why people can do, podcasts and talk about them, because there's, for every one of these characters, you could be a fan of their backstory in the books. You could be a fan of what they did in the movies. You could be a fan of what they do on the animated show. You could be a fan of how they look and who made them and what the story was about that got them brought to the screen. There's, all these different avenues to loving this stuff. And it's, and to me, endlessly fascinating.
For the creators like Dave Filoni, like I think that guy, Cinetine, I don't know, that was his name, the brain guy. He was used in the Clone Wars. So it's like, let's take that alien who I liked because he looked so ridiculous and let's give him an arc. Like,
well, and that's it too. I always, there's so many aliens that barely got seen in the Cantina and barely got seen in Jabba's palace that it's always interesting to me when people start making a lot of new aliens, because I just kind of go like, boy, the Given still never got his due. I'd love to see some more of that guy, or the Rickles guy. It's like he's in there and it's a really cool design. Like, let's see some more of that. Let's incorporate these guys in a kind of like giving the brain guy an arc. Come on,
Right.
When I see the Given, I think of Scream. It almost like you think like somebody at some point was like, that creature design is really crazy. I'm going to reuse this for like Halloween mask or something.
So what's neat is, Scream is I would imagine is based on, was Munch the print,
the Scream,
but the what's neat about The Given was that was based
Given species,
The Given was based on a Ralph McQuarrie sketch, and what's neat is the sketch doesn't look as much like the Scream mask as the final mask does. Like, but they definitely share similarities. And it's just it's again, it's that evolution. It's you start with the Ralph McQuarrie sketch. John Berg sculpts it in clay, and where does it go from there? John always said he just kind of called him Skull Guy, like he just thought of him as a skull more than anything.
Right.
Which, that's my favorite thing about you talk to the people who worked on these movies, especially Rick Baker's crew. Every alien is a guy. There's a brain guy, devil guy, skull guy. There's man guy, spider guy. There's bat demon guy. Like, it's all just one of the guys, and that to me is outstanding.
Yeah, Bobby's my favorite.
Yeah.
The bat character.
Which one?
Behind you. Kabe.
Oh yeah.
Adorable.
That's one of Stuart Freeborn's for the movie. We made the one behind me was the costume and mask were used in that the Super Bowl spot.
Yeah, it was just one of those things that as soon as it came on screen when I was little, I was like, that's my favorite. I like that one.
Yeah. Just squeaking for the juice. What's funny is Debbie Lee Carrington wore that for that commercial, and she was one of the Ewoks. For one, she was also she was in Total Recall, for folks that know her there. And as the Ewoks, she was in the scene, and I can't remember if I don't think she's the dead Ewok. I think she's the Ewok that like tugs on the other Ewok, like the saddest scene in all of Star Wars. Yeah. But that's she was awesome. She was super fun.
She was the one trying to wake up Nanda.
Right. Just like, oh no.
Well, I had no idea.
I can hear it. I can hear the scene right now in my head. That sound. Oh
God. I guess they had to have one casualty so it didn't look that ridiculous.
There had to be something, right? Like, I don't remember,
maybe off screen, George. I mean, come on. But I did see an interview you did on your channel, because I did do some research, where you spoke with Phil Tippett, John Berg, and Dennis Murin, and you looked like kind of like how we're looking when you're talking to us. So it's like there's always that sort of like
that's
chain
right.
of
There are
command.
tears.
Yes, there are tears. So when you talk to them, and I promise to our audience we will ask Tom, about Mando and Boba Fett, I promise. But when you talk to those guys, do you feel any sort of imposter syndrome, or are you one of the guys? Like, do they like? Is it one of those like seniority things where they're like, we got to make sure you stay right here and not here? Like, how is it with those guys?
I'll tell you what, with those guys, not so much. The imposter syndrome is a thing, man. Holy crap! Yeah, that's it's something where maybe it just, to me, it is important that I maintain an understanding of how fortunate I am to do what I do for a living.
Wow, that's great.
That is one of the most important things to me, just in general. And I think it's something that I feel is important with all the folks that I work with. It's one of the first things I ask people. You know, it's like if they're coming on an interview or something, it's like, I want to know, how do you feel about life? Do you feel fortunate in life? Because I feel like that's even folks that have been dealt a bad hand, and maybe even those folks specifically, having the ability to find the stuff that you've been lucky about keeps you going. And but yeah, I definitely, there's plenty of times where I'm like, pinch, really me, or are you sure? What's great though is, Phil's a little intimidating in his own way, but we get along. But
every time I hear Phil, I just think of Dinosaur Supervisor Phil, that meme that went around years ago that was like, Phil, you had one job on Jurassic Park. It was Dinosaur Supervisor.
If like a weird email from Phil comes through, I'll hear Christine in the other room every once in a while, like, you had one job, Phil.
You had one job, Phil. That's all I think about.
But it's John is one of the nicest people in the world, John Berg, and he's a dear friend. I got to know him a little over a decade ago, and we just connected. There's this weird resonance with the two of us. We can goof on a phone call for hours, and it's just amazing. So no, I never ever feel it with John. I feel nothing but just support and love from that guy. Dennis is also, he's Dennis. He's his intellect is intimidating, maybe I would call it, or certainly his body of work. But I don't know. At the core, all of us are the same. Like at the core, we're all just fans of this stuff, and for me, I feel lucky that I like all the same stuff these guys like, because I'm a huge fan of the old Universal monster movies. I love the old Harryhausen stuff. I love the Hammer horror movies. And all of that stuff is just, I can geek out over that just the way I geek out over Star Wars. And I think, we all share that stuff. We all feel the same passion for it. And when folks recognize that in each other, it smooths a lot over. And I definitely look up to all of those guys. That chat was a lot of fun. If anybody wants to look it up, it's on the Regal Robot YouTube page. And then there's a longer version of it that we put on the Tom Spina Designs YouTube page.
That's the one I watched.
Yeah, the Regal one is only about the Cantina, the Star Wars holochess sequence, because we were making replicas of those with Phil. But if you go to the Tom Spina Designs YouTube channel, you should be able to find it. It's probably the top video or most recent one.
It's from December. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, it was an interesting chat. And, to hear these guys talk about just their years in the business and the different stuff they've done, I could do that all day. That was a chat.
Amazing. Yeah.
Man, that could have gone on forever. I was okay with it.
Yeah. So in watching you talk to them, there is, and I don't know if it's an industry thing with you guys, but there is definitely a humbleness that still exists with these guys who are a fabric of the launching point of this movie franchise, let alone the other stuff they've done. But we're talking Star Wars here.
Right.
And, you could walk by John Berg on the floor of Star Wars Celebration and he will not get stopped by 99.9% of the people. But it's just like, he's one of the guys. And it's like, that's so interesting to me in itself. So I guess my question is, when I think of, because I'm a big fan of like Spielberg too, and I think of like Jaws and like the relationship between Quint and Hooper, and it's like I see is like Phil Tippett's like Quint, where he's like, we didn't have mapping technologies, we just had to reel it in and stuff. Like, does he ever like bust your chops? Like, well, I did it, and I didn't have scanning materials. Is it ever that?
He's. I've heard people call him like the grumpy uncle of the effects community. You know, there's a little of that. I'll tell you what, I feel that way sometimes. Like I'm not getting much younger around, and I get people coming in to work with us, and I'm just like, you learned how to do this? How? You learned this on YouTube?
All right.
Like, I didn't have YouTube. I didn't have Tube. I had, I had one book. It was the Tom Savini book. There was another by Dick Smith, but it wasn't as in depth. And I didn't know how to get any of the materials in there. There was a list of like suppliers in the back that I could write a letter to. Like, this is, you can go online and go to Monster Makers and talk to Arnold and get whatever you need. Like, what the hell?
The accessibility is crazy today. Yeah, that's a good point. As you probably crush a can of Narragansett beer and
like, or just to mention just like social media in general. Like, that was the whole thing with Twitter when they launched, is they said, they wanted people to be able to text a celebrity or a presidential candidate or something like that, and they literally get it like on their phone, like you are reaching out to the person directly, kind of thing.
The internet has democratized a lot of the creative arts.
That's well put.
And it's a really cool thing. Look, I mean, it's given me the opportunity to do all the stuff I do. Prior to this, there was no reaching your audience unless you happen to get, that 1 in a million thing where you got a TV show or something like that.
Right. Or a radio thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Print.
So it's
print.
like now.
What's print?
Right. Yeah. Now it's, everybody is at least at the start is on the same level. It's all going out on the same platform. Now, whatever else happens behind the scenes and where it goes from there, that's its own thing. But it definitely gives folks an opportunity that just didn't exist 25 years ago.
Right. Yeah. It's crazy. And to think like everything's sort of come full circle in terms of Star Wars, because in watching some of the making of The Mandalorian, Phil Tippett was sort of reeled back in. He was very interested in some of the stuff Jon Favreau was interested in, like the throwback stop motion, make things not necessarily look smooth.
Right.
Like the blurgs and how they would run and that sort of thing. And I believe Phil Tippett was involved with an AT-AT moving or something in season 2. Correct me if I'm wrong, but like seeing those guys come back around, and you being involved, like, can you touch on that? Like being involved today in Mandalorian or Book of Boba Fett and what that's like for you, and just let our audience know kind of what you may have contributed to those series.
Yeah. We are, I keep using the word lucky. We're very lucky to be this tiny, tiny, tiny contribution to these shows. I don't want anybody to blow anything out of proportion, but yeah, I was excited hearing about Mando when it was in progress. You'd hear the Huckleberry code name talked about with different things and stuff. And, I knew some of the folks from doing some conservation and display work that were in charge of the current Lucasfilm prop archives, not the Skywalker Ranch archives, which we've done all our restoration work with and stuff, and been very it was really, really cool stuff there. But through some of them, they were helping track some things down for the production. And they knew that I, had molds for certain things, or knew a lot of people that made different things. So, we'd get a call and be like, can you get us 4 Scout blasters? Or do you know where we could get a Boss blaster? Can we get a bunch of comm links? We had molds for a Todakia, the gaffy stick. And so the sand people in the first Mandalorian season, I guess that was probably episode 5 where they first show up. They're both holding these gaffy sticks that were made out of this mold that I had.
Oh man,
and
so cool.
I think the macro binoculars we sent them too in that episode. And the Cantina bar. So behind the bar is all the IG-88 heads. Those came out of a mold that we've got that Gordon Tarpley chromed up to send the show. Actually, we might have given them raw ones. I'll have to look back. We've done a lot of those. So we've done those for different recreations of the Cantina and things like that. We did them for Star Wars Land. So if anybody goes into Oga's Cantina, the chromed IG heads in the bar, and there's like this alternate canister. There's like, maybe 18 of them or 20 of them at each park. We did those. And
the ones that have like animals in them and stuff?
No, these are just like, they look like drink dispensers or something. They're like all that decoration behind the Cantina.
They look like IG-88's head, is what you're saying?
Yes. Yeah, it's the same part.
I've seen them.
The flame tube from a Derwent airplane engine, the Rolls-Royce engine. And then the outer combustion canister is the other one. So for the Star Wars Land project we modeled that other version. Gordon Tarpley did copies of that. We made some Cantina band instruments and things like that turned up in the parks. There was some other stuff we did for the shows that never turned up. We did the Kubaz in the first episode, the flute guy. So that was our mask.
Oh, yes.
He turns up in episode 4 too, I think, as well, as a bounty hunter with new goggles.
I love that.
And then for Book of Boba, we did a couple of things in Jabba's palace, which you never really got to see. So I'm going to hold off on talking about it. But they're really cool, and they were big, and I was kind of one of those little heartbreaks where it's like, oh man, I know they're there. Turn the camera.
Yeah.
But the cool thing here, Brian Sipe, I think it's Gamut is his production name, but he's just really, really great guy. Makeup artist, has a wonderful team. They did a lot of the makeup on Book of Boba season 1. They had come to us to get some of the classic aliens, which we had these molds for. Why reinvent the wheel? Somebody's got them, and we're already a vendor and doing stuff. So they reached out to us, and Pat at the shop cast up out of the old molds, I think. A couple of band guys, a Don Rickles guy, Cabe Shadrafan, Bat guy there, and what the heck else? Oh, a Mosep, that's one of my favorites. It's a weird alien. He was Jabba the Hutt in the comics, though, and I just always thought that one was cool. Did I say Snaggletooth? We did a Snaggletooth too. It was a holiday special style Snaggletooth. I think they made it a female because they had like long hair and a hood and stuff. It was a neat choice. But yeah, so we just sent them blanks on those, and then Brian's team did really cool paint ups and hair on all of them. I love seeing that. Some people get real precious about things. It's like, no, I made it. It's got to be a certain way. I love giving someone a blank of something and seeing what they do with it, because I'm like, I'm limited to, like, I want to make it the way it looked in the first movie. Like, I want to see someone put some imagination into this. I don't always have that. Let me see what you can do with this.
And that
I was going to say, sorry.
Go ahead, Lacey. I'm sorry.
I was going to say that one of the most interesting things that we've been discussing throughout this thread that I've been hearing from you is the community that surrounds this is just such a cool one. And I truly appreciate that every time you mention a creature or a monster, you mention the person that made it. It's like such a touch that I really appreciate, because it's like, it takes 2 seconds to say, and you make sure to say it. And I just really love that, because I know with us, it's so important to build these communities and to find your people, especially I think the internet has probably helped you with that, as we were talking about before. So to hear how close this community is, and just hearing you being like, this person made by this person, this thing made by this person. Like, I just love that. And I just wanted to let you know.
Thanks. For me, that's as important as the character is. Where did it come from? That's good of you to notice. Thank you.
And it has to be sort of freeing in a way to be able to let go of things too. The way you, the way your makeup is, where you say, like, some people are control freaks and like, no, the hair has to be blah blah blah. Like the amount of stuff you make and just send off. If you were that way, you'd probably be insane. You'd probably hate your job.
It's funny. I would love for anyone that works for me to hear you say that, because they would fight you to the end. I can be such a hover boss sometimes when it comes to this stuff, especially when we are, so right now, especially, this is being recorded. We're about 2 days away from putting our stuff in a crate for Star Wars Celebration. Today was pretty much like come right from the studio, 10 p.m. at night, get home, do the podcast. And that's the way it's kind of been the last little bit. But, like when we do something like do the paint mastering on like certain things, some of these new prototypes that we're going to be showing at Star Wars Celebration. This is stuff where it's like, this is going to be the first time people see this stuff, or if we're doing a paint master, especially, because I'm like, that's what everybody's going to copy as we make the rest of these. This has to be right. And sometimes it means you have to strip it down completely, or you have to make a new casting and start over, because, once you've put certain layers of paint on, there's no going back. And if we're going to produce these and every one of them has to look the same, we've got to use the same sequence of paints. We have to put them in this, not just the same color, but in the same order, because there's translucency in each layer. And if you don't get that, it's not going to work. And if you do something different in that first one, well, when you make all the other ones, you're never going to be able to match it. So it really is about, sometimes being
my anxiety is pain in the butt. Just hearing you talk about it. Anxiety, it's like, oh God.
Yeah, someone's crying right now at home.
So when there's a call for certain creatures and stuff, and like I gotta ask you too, like you seem that the Chalmun's Cantina seems to be your holy grail for Star Wars. So when they did recreate that with Dave Filoni's episode, I think it was the Gunslinger, like you were saying, Chapter 5, were you like, this? Is that that bullet hole there, right? That sort of thing. Like, were you able to look at it as a fan, or were you like analyzing it frame by frame? Like, how'd you, just as a fan who also creates, how'd you experience the return of the Cantina?
The first watch, I was able to kind of sit back a little bit because I was absorbed in the story. I wanted to see where this was going. It was a cool episode just in general. But yeah, I mean, immediately after it's frame by frame stuff. And I was also just excited because I walked in the bar and there's RIG heads, or as he's walking in the bar, the logo over the door, which was something that no one knew what that was. Pablo and I tried to figure that out for years. And Brandon Allinger from Prop Store had an old photo that Roger Christian provided him that ostensibly was just the picture of a dewback's butt, which, I mean, on its own is awesome. But we noticed that in the background of that shot was the sign over the cantina with the light off. And even with the light off, though, you could finally make out the characters on that sign. We jokingly call it the Spaga sign because it looks a little like an S, a P, a G, and an A. It's really just art. Like all the stuff in the first movie. There was no Arbesh yet. There was no, weird writing or anything like that.
This looks cool. Yeah.
Yeah. It was just stuff that was aesthetically cool and interesting. And I would guess that was probably John Barry. Or Roger Christian had something to do with, but John Barry would have been more on the art side of it. Anyway, so, to see that, like, we were like, oh my gosh, there it is. And so Chris Reif, who's part of, if you guys ever heard of Parts of Star Wars, look him up. It's amazing. The Facebook group is actually probably the best way to get it now. They have a website, I believe it's partsofsw.com, but it's a very outdated, like it's like a mid 90s, late 90s website. But these are guys that obsessed over the things in Star Wars were made from, the real world items that were used to create this galaxy far, far away. And it's amazing stuff. And so Chris Reif, both Star Wars authors and illustrators and stuff, and really great guys, known forever. And so they helped recreate that logo. And we showed it off at one of the Star Wars conventions. And then when the Mando scene was coming up, they reached out and they were like, "Hey, do you have the art for that?" And I was like, "I know where you're going,"
Wow.
So we sent them the art to put on the sign over the door. And what was cool is in Mando, when he walks in, they gave us a nice clear shot of it. In Star Wars, they only ever gave it you only ever saw half of it. So
yeah, I pulled it up now. It's this cool red and blue lettering.
Yes.
Yeah, just while you were like, "Oh, go take a look at it." Yeah, and it's funny you're saying it like as I pulled it up. The very clear shot right there, right as he's walking in.
Yeah, the Mando one, it's insane. What's great is if you go to, let's just say regalrobot.com/Star Wars and go to the decor page, we actually make a wood plaque with that art on it now. And to me, that's the cool thing, like stealth geek.
Me too, yeah.
Put it on the wall. Nobody knows what that is. It just looks like some kind of weird modern art. But like you and all your friends can just be like, Mando Episode 5, Star Wars: A New Hope, got it,
Dude. So if you again, you're gonna hate me, but I like
it's good.
That's all right. I like putting you in these situations. If you had to pick one or two items from Regal Robot that you're like, check this out.
Okay.
It's the nerdiest of nerdiest, the awesomest of awesomest. Where would you point people to on your site and be like, check this item out? You got to check this out.
With the exception of later today.
Yeah.
And not CZ3.
Wait till about 3 p.m. Eastern and check that.
And next week.
Yeah, exactly. Wink. You're going to hurt yourself there. So let's see here. I think just for the sheer amount of work that went into it, the hollow chest prop replica set that we did, which is in the custom character studio on the website. When you go to the regalrobot.com/Star Wars, it brings you to a 4-up page. One will take you to really cool decor and stuff like that. One will take you to furniture, which is kind of the more standard stuff, director chairs. Although, of course, being us, we have to put in like Revenge of the Jedi and Blue Harvest and all of that stuff on the director chairs. Yeah. And these really cool cafe tables. Then there's a section for custom furniture, which is like our Emperor throne replicas and the Han Solo and Carbonite tables and all of that stuff that we've kind of got known for, or at least originally. And then the custom character studio is all the collectible stuff, the maquettes, the replica props, the replica characters. So if you go there, the hollow chest prop replica signature set is if you want to pick one item, it was the plaques are signed by John Berg, Phil Tippett, and Dennis Murin. We made a great video with the three of them just talking about the scene and picking their brains about stop motion and their love for all of this stuff.
That was a great video too, by the way.
What was that?
Such a great video of them saying like, "Oh, was it this guy? Oh, it was the green guy. I like the green guy."
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Love it. One of the guys, right? But so, what we did there was we took Phil's digital that they did when they were making Force Awakens. They scanned a lot of the original props, the original puppets that still exist, and sent us that digital for our replicas. And we went through and then did a ton of work accurizing some of those because they had to, take some liberties for what they were doing or for how they were going to use them. Took them from T-pose, which is the, sort of arms out, legs together pose that they do for something you're going to mold and cast traditionally for an armature piece. And put them in cool poses that made sense for each of the characters. And a lot of times fit their, what we like to call like the ready pose, which is how each of them sort of stand on the board when they're not in motion.
Gotcha.
Then just spent so much time making sure that every single one of those was right in every detail, was reproducible, that we got the paint colors right, that we got, 9 months of non-stop work went into that set. Wow. I'm really, really proud of what we did there. And Phil gave us, it's hanging on the wall in the studio. Phil sent us a picture of him with the whole set, and he's just like this, which is, like his happy face. And then below it, it says like, Fantastico, my kudos to everybody involved. Give my regards to the, all teams. And, he just gave us this glowing review. He said to a few people, he's like, it's if I didn't touch him, I wouldn't know it wasn't the real thing.
Oh my God.
And like that just, oh my God, that just means the absolute world to me and everybody that works with us, and all the work that we put into it feels so good when something like that happens. Like there's a guy that knows, what those props are like, and to make him get that feeling, to make him open the box and feel like he's looking at those props again. Like that, we did it right there.
He's the guy that call in on Pawn Stars and says, "Is this legit?" And he's like,
yeah.
Legit.
So there's one.
I'm looking at the site. You have Bidlow Quirv's skull with the Rancor gate control magnet.
Oh yeah,
that's insane. And you have
it's a little magnet. That was one of the tougher ones to get through Lucasfilm too. We love the obscure stuff. We try to look at everything in a new light. We try and say, how can this become useful? If you go to the custom furniture studio, Rich Riley thought of this great idea years ago with me, where it was like, what if you took the Falcon flying through the asteroids and had the asteroids a little bit flat topped, and you put a piece of glass on it and it's a coffee table. And it's just like, okay, yeah, we could do that. And, we figure out how to do that. Or, when we had our first Star Wars celebration, I said, we need to do something. I want something interactive. I want something that could be a big sculptural piece, because everybody hears Star Wars furniture and they think it's like a stool with a Star Wars logo on it,
Sure. Yeah.
And
Spencer
I'm like,
gifts.
how do we get people to know that we're like effects guys making Star Wars furniture? And so we said, okay, let's make a photo op for Star Wars Celebration where it's a furniture piece that people can sit in or sit on or next to or interact with somehow. And we came around to Rich's, just kind of said something like, well, what about a dewback, but it's a sofa? And we were just like, that's it, boys, go home. We've done it. Like that. We've got our idea. Because, immediately I go like, well, I know who's got a casting of the dewback from the movie that we can scan.
Oh, man.
And, that was really the first piece we ever did with 3D scanning. And, that was really, really cool. And we had fun with that design. And we made it this really neat, interesting thing that nobody would ever do. No one had seen before. And then tons of people came in and sat on and took photos with at Celebration. And it was so much fun. And what a way to kind of announce ourselves, Like,
oh my God, yeah.
Like we needed I wanted something that people could see and immediately know who we were. And if you want, there's your second piece, John. Since you made me pick two pieces, you monster, is the dewback sofa, because you look at it and you know that we only take ourselves seriously so far, and then the rest is just ridiculous.
Oh man, I'm looking at the dewback sofa right now. That's a man cave. I gotta replace that with a dewback sofa.
Yeah. Now you know who to call.
I do, yeah, and it's not Ghostbusters.
I like that Darth Vader desk.
Thank you. Do you mean cool. the Imperial one with Vader's helmet sculpt, or do you mean the meditation chamber?
I mean the meditation chamber because it's coming over the top, but more importantly, what's interesting to me is how you might actually like be sitting at that desk and you turn around to start doing your work. It's like it's just there.
And the helmet's a lamp.
It all looks so good.
That.
Yeah,
cool.
that was one of those ones where the customer came to us. It's a tattoo artist. Really good tattoo artist, does great Star Wars tattoos. And she, Brandy Bruce, she had this idea. She wanted a workstation, she wanted a desk, and we just kicked around a bunch of different ideas, and eventually settled on the idea of the meditation chamber. And I'm just like, well, if we're doing that, you need a crane lamp that has the helmet on it, and we'll just put the bulb in the helmet. We had fun with that. What I like about that is it's not as literal as it appears. It looks very replica-y when you just glance at it, but it's very faceted, and we boiled the elements down in a way that it could be made with traditional millwork and not have to be a big fiberglass cast piece or something like that, or made the way you would for a movie where it would probably be like, some Luan board and a bunch of vac form panels stapled to it that on screen look amazing. But if anybody ever looked at it, they would go like, oh, this is terrible. But so we came up with this way of doing it that was, really nice millwork, all, quality wood with laminate like you would have on a countertop. So it's super durable and super tough, and yet still looks the part. We pulled in the inspiration and the elements without necessarily doing a replica that, for starters, would have cost many times more just from the development of the molds and everything like that. But also made it a little bit unique at the same time, which I like that. I love taking elements out of something and turning them into something rather than just saying, oh, here's a prop replica of this. The prop replica stuff is its own thing and it's a lot of fun. But when it comes to the furniture stuff, I like to make, how do we pull some function out of this, and how do we do it in a way that is furniture-y as well as proppy.
Well, it makes me want to force choke an Admiral just looking at it. So you get the job done, man.
Even the one guy remotely, through the
yes,
thing.
Yeah.
Gosh.
So you'll be at Celebration. I know we talked about it in our video that's going to be coming out later today at booth 2518. Do you have anything?
Correct.
Yeah, anything at your booth that you can reveal now that people can go check out if they're going to Celebration?
Right. Yeah. No, we're going to have a whole. Oh, nope. The feed's breaking up. I'm sorry. I'm not going to be able to reveal anything. Unfortunately, I'm muzzled when it comes to that stuff right now. But check back the week before Star Wars Celebration. Join us on social. Go to @RegalRobot on your favorite thing, whether that's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, whatever. And we'll be doing a reveal week, the Monday to Friday of the week before the show. So I believe that's the 16th to the 19th or 20th. And you'll get to see what we have in store for the show.
Awesome.
We have a lot. There's some really, really cool things, some great, it's a range from, I'll be able to say this, from actual legitimate limited edition high-end collectible, which you guys might be revealing later today, to, the $20 takeaway item that has that cool stealth geek factor, to a couple of things in between.
Give me the small items that I put on a shelf that someone goes, what is that? That's what I love. That's my thing.
And we've got some of that. And we've got one piece. I don't know. I'll want to, once we reveal it, I'd love to get your take on one piece in particular. It's something I came up with, and that Sean Fields did a beautiful digital sculpt, and then the team did just a great job doing all the production on them. They've been going absolutely bonkers making these because we know we're going to go through a lot of them, and we want to make sure that we have enough so that at least 50 or 75 people a day get a chance to get one. So yeah, keep an eye out on @RegalRobot on your favorite social. We'll be revealing stuff soon, and if you're at the show, come by booth 2518. Say hi. Tell me you saw me here, so I know if it's worth hanging out with these guys again, or whatever.
I ran to your booth to get the Jabba Dornacker magnet, so I'll be running there again.
We'll be sending our people to your booth for sure, because just like us, we're all just gigantic nerds in the best way possible. So, so also, TomSpinaDesigns.com, RegalRobot.com. Like Tom said, booth 2518. Why couldn't you get booth 1138? What's going on?
I don't know. I'll have to write an email or something. I'll let you
next time.
You know what? One other thing, and I should probably say this, otherwise someone at the shop will be mad at me for not mentioning it. If you really don't want to miss out on this cool stuff we're about to announce, go to the Regal Robot website and just put your email in the newsletter list.
Yeah.
Like we send maybe 1 or 2 emails out a month. During Star Wars Celebration, maybe there'll be one a week or something like that.
Yeah.
And if we ever do a sale, that's where we announce it. If we ever have a coupon, which is rare, but we just did it for May the 4th, that's where we announce it. If there's something new coming out, that's where we announce it. So if you want to be like in the know club, if you want to, hear about this stuff first, that's how you do it. And trust me, we won't spam you. And if we do, just unsubscribe. We don't care.
They don't spam. I'm on the newsletter. They don't spam.
Thank you.
And for our, most of our listeners are audio listeners. I would say about 80% or so. For this episode and the video we're obviously going to put out later, even if you're listening to this now, check out the video version. Just for Tom's background alone and some of the other stuff he showed us. It's been really great. So Tom, first of all, I want to thank you for your time. Really appreciate it very much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Running all over Long Island as the week goes on, as we get closer to Celebration. We look forward to seeing you at Celebration. And is there anything else that you can plug or tell people about, or are you good to go?
Oh, I think we've plugged everything we need to. I just thank you so much for having me. We're really, really, really fun chat. Thanks. And hopefully we can chat again someday. There's always more to talk about when it comes to Star Wars.
Only Muppets.
I'm there.
Yeah.
I'm so there.
Forget Star Wars. Let's do Muppets.
We should do something just for our patrons or something that is not even Star. Sometimes we talk about Taco Bell, Tom. We go all over the place on this podcast.
Can we do a White Castle episode?
Now you're cooking, my man. Get those diced onions in those sliders. All right.
Now you're thinking in squares.
You know what's funny? Star Wars Celebration Chicago, me and James went to White Castle because I missed it so much because there's none up here in Connecticut. So there you go, man. But before we get out of here,
I'm going to be heading to In-N-Out Burger in a couple of weeks. That's all I know.
Yep.
I'm excited for that.
Us too.
I love it.
Us too. No question. Yeah. Before we get out of here, we do want to say a special thank you to our patrons at patreon.com/resistance broadcast who keep the show going. We do 2 shows a week and a lot of other stuff. And so we want to give a special shout out to some of them real quickly. Our generals, Carmelo, Jeremy Myers, John Reese, Jetta Rosewater, Paul Olson, Frank Grande, Darth Hurricane, John Charlton, Nick Kratz, Christian Morales, Brian Smith, Matt Chitty, Danny, Mike Ramori, Matt Heath, Double C Chris White, Brendan McLaughlin, and Val Trichkoff, and David Probus, Neil Shaw, Kendall Gellner, Ryan Wara, Dave Hornack, Micah Harrison, Thomas Hennessy, and Andrew Staley as our Spice Runners. Thank you all so much for all of your support. StarWarsNewsNet.com for your Star Wars news, reviews, editorials, information, and more. You know where to find our podcast. I'm at Johnny Hoey on Twitter, and Star Wars Newsnet, and my movie podcast, Just Like the Movies. Lacey.
People could find me on Twitter and Instagram at Lacey Gilleran.
James.
And of course, Twitter and Instagram just is the same, always at Meyer Trunks.
All right. And Tom, Twitter, where are you at on Twitter?
It's just at Tom Spina Designs and at Regal Robot. That's where to get me.
All right, Tom, thank you very much for joining us. You have a key to the Resistance base. Anytime you want to come back, we really appreciate it. And we look forward to, we'll see you very soon at Celebration, my man. So we really appreciate it. It's been an honor.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's a lot of fun. Talk soon.
All right, thanks.